I'm afraid the Election Commission hasn't learned the lessons that it should have. An exercise which was a thoughtless exercise of mass disenfranchisement has now been refined into a weapon of targeted exclusion. That is the difference that I see. I'm afraid I still believe that this is not principally an exercise in cleaning electoral rolls. The Election Commission has shown almost no interest in the simplest things that could have been done to clean up electoral rolls. That forces me to think that the exercise is not principally about cleaning or purification of electoral rolls, that it is an exercise of citizenship determination from the back door. This is what makes me believe that we are still looking at the danger of systematic large-scale exclusion.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Yesterday, the Election Commission announced the schedule for carrying out the special intensive revision of electoral rolls nationwide. It seems it will be a replication of the exercise conducted earlier this year in Bihar. How much of a concern is that? How do critics of the Bihar SIR respond to this? And what do they propose to do about it? Those are the key issues I shall raise today with the national convener of the Bharat Jodo Abhiyan and an outspoken critic of the Bihar SIR exercise, Yogendra Yadav. Yogendra Yadav, yesterday the Election Commission announced the terms of the special intensive revision to be carried out in 12 states and union territories, including most states and union territories where elections are due next year. Let me start by asking, how do you, a critic of the SIR exercise carried out in Bihar, respond to this announcement?
Karan, I'm afraid the Election Commission hasn't learned the lessons that it should have. An exercise which was a thoughtless exercise of mass disenfranchisement has now been refined into a weapon of targeted exclusion. That is the difference that I see. What we had in Bihar was a ham-handed knee-jerk reaction, which caused enormous unease, enormous problems. So Election Commission has reduced its own problems. Election Commission has made some small fine-tuning, but the basic structure of SIR, an unprecedented way of altering the universal adult franchise of this country, remains. The basic exclusionary character still remains. The basic problems with the exercise itself remain. And the basic differences with the past continue to be there. So I would not see this as an exercise of purification, an exercise of revising, improving the quality of electoral rolls. It still continues to be principally an exercise in exclusion.
Let me ask you two basic points in a sense to set the scene. In what sense is this an improvement compared to the Bihar exercise? Several papers today have itemized changes that have happened. To what extent are those improvements?
There are changes, and some of them are improvements. To my mind, these are improvements which help the election commission. So the commission is particularly careful about reducing its own burden, which it should. I don't mind that. But are these huge improvements for the people? That continues to be the question. The improvements are, number one, of course, election commission is more prepared. Last time, as you recall, they issued the order on 24th of June evening, and they wanted it implemented on 25th morning, where no one had any idea that something like this was happening. Now, there is some time, and to be fair, they have now been preparing for the last few months in many of these states. So a lot of groundwork has taken place. There is better training. Two, three things that the Election Commission has done, which are learnings from Bihar. Number one, they have done away with the requirement that every single person will have to submit documents along with the enumeration form. Now, this was a big headache for the people. Remember, this was also a very big headache for the Election Commission, which they realized in Bihar this was an impossibility for them to deal with. So, well, to improve their own situation and possibly to help the people, they have reduced it. That's positive. Second, they have also made it possible for people to file enumeration form without signing. Now, that's something which has not been noticed by the newspapers so far. But the new enumeration form that has come allows someone in the family to sign on behalf of someone else. Now, that's an improvement to my mind because it should help the migrants. This is something I did not notice to begin with, but that's certainly an improvement. The third thing that the Election Commission has done is that it has now formally acknowledged what it was doing de facto in Bihar. Although the Election Commission on paper in Bihar had said that if your name is in 2003 list, then you get exemption, but no one else gets exemption. In reality, Election Commission realized that the system was not working, and they started giving ad hoc exemptions to the children of that person, to anyone in that family. Now the Election Commission has formalized it and has extended it to all the members of the family. So all these are conveniences that are built into it, which should be welcome. Most of these should be welcome, but it doesn't change the basic character.
You know, you said that most of the improvements make things easier for the Election Commission. You questioned whether they make things easier for the people themselves. But some of the things you mentioned will definitely make life easier for people. For instance, documentation doesn't have to be provided at the enumeration stage. It can be provided later. Not everyone has to sign the form themselves. A member of the family can sign on their behalf. And as you say, that will make life a lot easier for migrants who aren't there to sign for themselves. Those are surely improvements that help the people themselves.
Yes, they do. And in fact, Karan, the Election Commission de facto had to do these things in Bihar anyway, if you would recall. In Bihar, on 24th of June, they issued the notification. And within a week, the Election Commission had to come out with a press release saying, no, you don't need to submit documents, because they realized it was foolhardy to expect that. So yes, the learnings have been incorporated. Yes, it is positive. Yes, it would help the people. Yes, the large number of people who were affected by this rather unthought measure, the numbers would be reduced. The Election Commission says that about 70 to 75% people will be covered under exemptions. So only 20 to 25% people will have to now provide documents. So in that sense, yes, it is a welcome step.
Let me ask you the opposite of that question. In what sense is this the same as Bihar? In other words, what are the problems and concerns that were manifest when Bihar happened and which will now repeat themselves?
Karan, I've been saying, and I've said to you more than once, that special intensive revision is an unprecedented kind of an exercise, which is not merely an exercise in improving the quality or revising electoral rolls. It revises, in fact, it stands on its head, the principles that have underlined the right to vote in India. And those, unfortunately, do not change with the second phase of the SIR. Above all, what SIR had done was to shift the onus of being on the voters list to the voter. This has never happened in India before. In India, the norm has been someone comes to your house, someone writes down your names, possibly gets your signatures, but the onus of putting you on the voters list is on the election commission. In the world, this is called state initiated registration of voters. That's a system we have followed. SIR completely changes it. It now, the onus is on the individual. All that the election commission is doing is to say, all right, we are giving you a form. The form is half filled anyway. You have to fill it up. But the onus still lies on you. If you do not submit it within a month, your name would automatically be deleted. And when your name is deleted, you would have no notice, no order, no hearing, no appeal. That one basic exclusionary feature still remains. Number two, the nature of documents that will be asked. The nature of documents has not changed, 11 plus 1. The same 11 documents, the Election Commission has still not explained why is it that documents that Election Commission accepted till yesterday, documents that Election Commission would accept even today in Delhi, why have those documents not been accepted? Documents like PAN card, driving license, Manrega job card, and in the case of Aadhaar, as you would have noticed, Election Commission continues to be extremely reluctant to accept Aadhaar. Aadhaar is included with a qualification that it is not a proof of citizenship. Of course, it's not. But why not put this qualification with the remaining 8 documents, which are also not proof of citizenship? So it is still not clear if Aadhaar would be a stand-alone document like other things. So that feature still remains. And in one respect, I fear, Karan, that it may have got worse than before, which is examination and verification of citizenship. This exercise, the second phase, makes it even more clear than the first phase that it is principally an exercise to determine citizenship. As the Chief Election Commission himself clarified, that in every single case, step one would be checking whether you or anyone in your family was on the electoral rolls in 2002, 3, or 4. If you were not, then you would have to give certificates. Now, large number of people will be given notice. So this is more of an exercise. In the first round, you were not asked this question. Everyone asked to produce documents. But a lot of people would not be asked about their citizenship. In this case, citizenship test is a universal test now. In that sense, it is worse than before.
And I should point out for the audience's sake that this is where the SIR being conducted both nationwide hereafter and that was conducted earlier in Bihar differs from the guidelines that the SIR operated under in 2003. That specifically said it is not the job of the enumerator to verify and check on citizenship. Now that has become the primary task almost.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Karan, because while the Chief Election Commission said yesterday that SIR has been carried out 8 times in the past, and we are only repeating that, as I pointed out on your show, this is a simple lie. It's a plain lie, because in 2002, 3, 4, nothing of that kind happened. Never in the history of Indian elections have people been asked to submit pro forma form, otherwise their names get deleted. Never in the history have your pre-existing names been reduced to cipher. Never in the history has the Election Commission got into the business of examining the citizenship. No, I should correct myself. It did get into that in 1980s. The matter went to the Supreme Court. This was the famous Lal Babu Hussain case, in which the Supreme Court laid it down and said it is none of your business to do mass examination of citizenship. And that particular judgment of the Supreme Court was cited and used by the Election Commission in the 2003 verification, in the 2003 revision exercise. So it is important to remember that this is an exercise of a kind that has never taken place. Election Commission is going against the Supreme Court ruling of the past. The Election Commission is going against its own letters, instructions, and Election Commission is going against the precedent that it cites.
Let me at this point, Yogendra Yadav, ask you a few, and I suppose I should describe them as rudimentary questions. The process starts today and it ends with the publication of the final electoral roll on the 7th of February. Is that sufficient time for this exercise?
Well, if preparations have been made in advance, then it is sufficient. Giving people 1 month's notice. Normally, if you reside in the village, normally, if the BLO comes to your house, and normally, if you are allowed to fill in on behalf of others, the time period should be sufficient, and 2 months period then for notices and so on. It is not very different from the manner in which these things have been carried out in the past. The difficulty is the draconian provision that in case you fail to submit your enumeration form within 1 month, your your name, your in a sense, your voting right is extinguished straight away without any remedy. That draconian provision is the problem. Otherwise, 1 month would have been all right.
Now, the Election Commission has said, and you pointed this out yourself a moment ago, that Aadhaar cards, along with the other 11 stipulated documents, will be accepted, but only as proof of identity. But they've gone one step further this time. Not only is the Aadhaar not proof of citizenship, the Chief Election Commissioner said it won't even be considered proof of date of birth. So if there is a question mark over when you're born and whether you're old enough, which could arise in the case of new people coming onto the rolls, Aadhaar won't suffice. What do you make of that?
For some reason, Election Commission has been extremely reluctant to accept Aadhaar, and you would have noticed they have given reasons in the Supreme Court, which are very mild and small reasons. But outside the court, in public discourse, BJP supporters and sources from Election Commission have been very vociferous against Aadhaar. The Aadhaar question becomes important because it is the only document which is almost universally available. Now, you want to carry out an exercise in revision of electoral rolls. You want to ensure that no eligible person is left out. Why is it that you are against the one document, the Government of India document, which is almost universally available? The reasons cited are the following. Number one, Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. It's absolutely correct. Aadhaar is not by itself a proof of citizenship. But as Justice Bagchi pointed out in the Supreme Court, the same applies to at least 8 other documents on the Election Commission's list. Now you tell me, is class 10 mark sheet a proof of citizenship? Is caste certificate a proof of citizenship? Is getting a bland patta a proof of citizenship? Is a residence certificate a proof of citizenship? So these are weird logic. Someone comes and says, but even foreigners can get Aadhaar. This is an argument touted very often. What they conveniently conceal is the fact that the Aadhaar card of the foreigners is distinctly different from the Aadhaar card of an Indian, because every Aadhaar card issued to a foreigner has a deadline written into it. It has an expiry date. Your and my Aadhaar card does not have an expiry date. So this is a ridiculous argument. Why is it that Election Commission, and of course, then the argument is, well, Aadhaar card is issued in a completely random manner. Aadhaar card is unreliable. Anyone can pick it up. This argument comes from a government which has been ruling this country for last 11 years. So the government is saying that the principal universal document that we have provided to the people of this country is an unreliable document. And after 11 years, we are unable to correct it. I mean, these are very, very strange arguments. The only reason I can find behind Election Commission's insistence is once Aadhaar is accepted as a standalone document, then the objective of targeted exclusion cannot be achieved. Then anyone would walk in and say, but here is my Aadhaar, take it. And to my mind, it sort of deepens my suspicion that underlying this is a design for targeted exclusion.
Let me raise a third key question with you. The Bihar exercise, as we've now discovered, disproportionately disenfranchised women and migrants. Is that likely to happen now at a nationwide level, or has that problem been rectified?
About women, the Election Commission has not even recognized that this has been the case, although we gave data in the Supreme Court. And in the counter affidavit, Election Commission gave data which simply recognizes and acknowledges the fact that we have given. There is simply no two views about it. And this, incidentally, is one of the principal purpose. What we pointed out in the Supreme Court and the argument that I made to you last time is that Bihar has a gender ratio which has been improving slightly. But Bihar had a problem. Bihar's gender ratio in the electoral rolls was very bad. Over the years, that has also improved and kind of beginning to catch up with Bihar's overall gender ratio. However, as a result of SIR, there has been a sudden drop in the gender ratio in Bihar's electoral roll. Now, this should be a matter of deep concern to an election commission whose rules clearly say gender parity should be your gender proportionality should be your key concern. And I was very sad to see that Election Commission does not mention it anywhere. They do not take it on board, and there is no provision whatsoever for improvement. As for the migrant, when I heard the conference, I was very disappointed because all that the Chief Election Commissioner had to say was that, well, they can use an app, as if every Dihadi ka Mazdoor who works in Delhi walks with a laptop, walks with a smartphone, and is easily able to download things and so on. But later on, when I saw the form, and I noticed the fact that they have allowed family members to file enumeration form on behalf of someone who may be temporarily away, it mitigates the thing somewhat. However, this is only if some members of your family are there. But as we do know, Karan, there are families that move away for temporary work. An election commission earlier in 2022 had a very detailed discussion on how migrant workers face disenfranchisement. Election Commission acknowledged that migrant workers find it almost impossible to get their names enrolled in the place where they work. So the only realistic chance that they have is of being enrolled in the place where they originally left and where they would come back within a few months too. However, the Election Commission doesn't seem to provide any avenue for a family which has moved away for work. And this happens in large parts of countries. Families move away for a few months and then come back. By then, they would realize that SIR has happened, their names have been deleted, and nothing has been done. Election Commission, unfortunately, doesn't even think that's a problem.
You know, Yogendra Yadav, this raises the question, given the infirmities that we've discussed, and we've discussed them in considerable detail, they're to do with the stress on determining citizenship, the requirement for electors to provide documents, although now they provide it at a later stage, not at the enumeration stage, and putting the onus on electors to fill in the enumeration form themselves and to do so within a tight deadline. Given these infirmities, what does that mean for the nationwide SIR exercise?
I'm afraid I still believe that this is not principally an exercise in cleaning electoral rolls. The Election Commission has shown almost no interest in the simplest things that could have been done to clean up electoral rolls. One of them is duplication. Election Commission acknowledges that yes, there are people who feature on more than one booth in the same constituency, in more than one constituency in the same state, and in more than one state. These are duplicate voters. Yesterday, the CEC was asked, what do you plan to do about it? Is there a deduplication software that you are planning to use? Incidentally, that is not some reporter's idea. This was exactly Election Commission's own suggestion in 2016 in an exercise which it called National Electoral Rolls Purification. So deduplication is an elementary thing. You use a software which would pick up if there are more than one Karan Thapar with the same father's name with the same age in Delhi or anywhere in the country. Chief Election Commission's response, believe it or not, was, well, we don't need it because, duplication happens only if the same person would sign enumeration in more than one places, and that's illegal. So this is like a police officer saying that, there's no need to have policing because crime is illegal. I mean, what kind of a statement is that? And this coming from a person from IIT Kanpur. is surprising. I mean, IITs don't normally produce people who are intellectually challenged. So, to my mind, what it showed was a complete indifference to these things. There is another routine problem: large number of junk names. Karan, I actually showed it in the Supreme Court that Bihar voters list had names written in Kannada script, names written in Tamil script in Bihar. Why can't the election commission clean it up? That should be one of the first things that they can do. No, they're not interested. People with same photograph being in 20 places, election commission is not interested. That forces me to think that the exercise is not principally about cleaning or purification of electoral rolls, that it is an exercise of citizenship determination from the back door. And all the conveniences that we are talking about are conveniences for people whose citizenship election commission doesn't want to question or check. Because do remember, the Bihar SIR exercise caused enormous discomfort even for BJP supporters. BJP's own voters, BJP's own allies were also very unhappy. So life has been made easy for them. But would it continue to be an instrument of targeted exclusion? Has the election commission even tried to develop a protocol on how these documents would be checked, on what basis would they be verified? There is no such protocol in existence, and the election commission has developed no such protocol. It all is to the subjective satisfaction of the ERO, who is an STM, who works under the orders of the ruling party. This is what makes me believe that we are still looking at the danger of systematic large-scale exclusion still continues. There has to be a vigil now that the Election Commission is going ahead with it. I sincerely hope that there would be some legal remedies, or at least civil society groups, political parties, citizens, all of us have to be vigilant that this is not effectively wielded as an instrument of exclusion and targeted deletion.
Let me quote some of the things you said because I think they're particularly important. You said it is an exercise of citizenship determination from the back door. You feared that it will result in systematic large-scale exclusion of voters. Is this being done on someone's behest and behalf? Or is the Election Commission simply doing it because it wants to do it? In other words, are they acting as a proxy for the government?
We can only speculate. And the reason why we are forced to speculate is that the order of SIR was brought in such a hurry in June 2025. The Chief Election Commission himself, in his interviews 3 weeks before the SIR was to begin, was announcing all kinds of grand plans. SIR was not one of them. And from whatever we know and whatever has been speculated in the media, there was no consultation even within the Election Commission before SIR was announced. So it gives rise to the suspicion because the government is unwilling. Even under RTI, the government has refused to share that file, which was the basis for SIR decision. So that gives rise to the suspicion that there is an extraordinary synergy now between Election Commission of India and the Home Ministry of this country, not to mention the BJP as a political party. So there is good reason to suspect that the ruling dispensation, driven by the Home Ministry, handed over something to the Election Commission, and the Election Commission is simply obeying and following it up, making all kinds of other concessions without deviating from the basic mandate. And the basic mandate is not about cleaning the electoral rolls. The basic mandate is about conducting NRC from the back door.
Have a disproportionately large number of Muslims been disenfranchised as a result in Bihar?
Yes, in Bihar, the preliminary analysis that we carried out, because it can only be provisional, because Election Commission does not mark voters as Hindu, Muslim, as it should not. But using name recognition software, when we analyzed the voters list, we found that in the 65 lakh deletions that took place, Muslims were about 25%, although their population in Bihar is only about 17%. So there is been the disproportionate exclusion of Muslims there. And in the 3.66 lakh voters that got deleted after the draft list came, again, Muslims were nearly 32%, almost double of their share in population. So yes, we have seen that provisionally, Election Commission does not recognize communities and religions officially, but please do remember the one famous case where Election Commission had actually ordered rewriting of electoral rolls, where genuine SIR was carried in 2003, was in the case of Uttar Pradesh Assembly, where Muslim names had been removed. And Mr. Lingdo, who was the CEC then, got it checked and found that yes, one particular community has been removed, and that's when he ordered the electoral rolls revision. So Election Commission does and should take into account the fact that of any systematic exclusion of a community. We have this evidence, and my real fear, Karan, is about what is going to happen in Bengal and in Uttar Pradesh. In Bengal, because that's the whole point. I mean, in many ways, people would suggest and many suspect that the whole exercise was started in Bihar to prepare the background for what's going to happen in Bengal. And in Uttar Pradesh, because the manner in which the government has gone about doing things, and if you look at some of the by-elections that took place in Uttar Pradesh, where Muslim names were deleted and Muslims were physically prevented from voting openly by people in uniform, it does give rise to suspicion that we are going to look at targeted large-scale exclusion of minorities.
Would I be right in summing up this exercise that is now happening nationwide, it happened earlier in Bihar, as not just seriously flawed, but also politically colored?
That, I'm afraid, is a suspicion that all of us have had. And given the rather low credibility that the Election Commission enjoys, it would be hard not to deny this, and especially when you see what the Election Commission is doing in the light of what the Home Minister of this country is saying, in the light of what other BJP leaders are saying every day, and you notice a strange synchrony between the two, well, you would be forced to conclude that there is a political color, that there is a design of exclusion, design of exclusion of a kind which in the short term and in the long run be convenient to the BJP.
Now, meanwhile, you are one of the petitioners who has challenged the legality and the constitutionality of the SIR exercise at the Supreme Court. Where does that case stand at the moment? And are you hoping that that can in some way influence what is about to start today nationwide?
I sincerely hope so. In the case of Bihar, now anything would be infructuous because the elections have begun. The case that began in the month of July with the vacation bench and then has had many hearings. Initially, the case was focused, and from our side, the case was essentially about unconstitutionality and illegality of SIR as an exercise. But for various reasons, which I don't fully understand, it became then a series of hearings about interim reliefs and grievance redressal kind of mechanism for about 2 months or so. The Supreme Court converted this challenge of constitutionality of SIR into an exercise of grievance redressal of SIR in the case of Bihar. I do hope that now that the next hearing is scheduled for 4th November, where the court has asked for final affidavits and final responses, I do hope that we come back to the constitutionality question. And if the constitutionality question is settled, and the Supreme Court laid down certain guidelines of do's and don'ts, either the whole thing, the entire exercise is declared unconstitutional, which to my mind it is, because it violates Article 10 of the Constitution, it violates Article 326 of the Constitution, it violates the fundamental right to equality in the Constitution. So if the exercise is declared unconstitutional, then of course the entire SIR goes. If the Supreme Court says, gives a more nuanced or a more complex judgment, which is to say SIR is okay provided it does A, B, C, D, then of course it would be influenced. So I'm still hoping that two or three things are certainly looked at by the judiciary. The fact that anyone who does not fill enumeration form, their voting rights and all rights to legal remedies are extinguished is a completely unconstitutional and illegal thing. I do hope the Supreme Court does something about it. I do hope the Supreme Court clarifies that Aadhaar is as much a standalone document as is a class 10 mark sheet, as is any other document, which could take away the exclusionary character of these things. I do hope the Supreme Court lays down a procedure of how document verification is to take place, and to move away from the arbitrariness built into the process. So yes, like all citizens of this country, I do look up to the judiciary, I do look up to the Supreme Court, and I continue to hope.
This means that the Supreme Court is your last hope.
Well, not the last hope. In a republic, the last hope must lie with the public. But yes, within the constitutional institutional setup, the Supreme Court is the last hope.
The problem with saying the last hope must lie with the public is the public can only be approached through elections, and that election will be on the basis of the electoral rolls that are being revised and reviewed, and therefore the public won't have a clear say.
How right. I mean, that really is the dilemma. But in the last instance, public has many democratic ways of asserting itself, as we have seen in many countries around ourselves. I do hope we do not reach that place. I do hope that the Election Commission can recover some of its lost credibility and reputation. And I do hope that in this country, the public does not have to resort to the kind of mechanisms that the public has to use in our neighborhood. I do hope that we sort out these things through the constitutionally provided framework.
Yogendra Yadav, I thank you for the time you've given me. I thank you for your analysis of the nationwide exercise that is about to start today. I'm deeply grateful. Take care. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.